Welcome, welcome. This is number 3 of 3 with Dr. Dorothy as part of the Wellther series. And we've been having some great conversations, but I think there's an element of great story sharing that Dr. Dorothy has been inviting us to listen in with. And so I thank you for that. That is wonderful, wonderful. But in the last video, we said, why don't we just come back to the emotions and leading and link that to the notion of leader? Because the first two have had a great leaning into life, but sometimes there's things about business and whether an employee or an employer kind of idea. So let's jump into a bit of a business conversation and link emotions and leading. So you have taken a path where that is an important element of your life personally, but also who you support, the executives that you support. Where would you start with an executive around the story of emotions and leading? And let's see where that might lead us.
I would begin, as I do, by looking at, if they're hiring me, what do they think is going on in their job, in their career, in their company, depending upon what that is for them. All right. What do they think is going on that's created the problem they're coming in with? And how can I help? And as they share the story, I then want to look through the story and see where their emotions are a part of this and see what story fits. Because if I listen to the facts that I'm presented with, I may find out that I would interpret all of that dramatically differently. I may interpret it exactly the same way. I'll wait and see. But as he or she is speaking, I then look to see what's really going on. Why is it that this is difficult for them? What about this made it so problematic? And sometimes it is that they've got some really difficult folks working with them, or they've got people in the wrong positions working for them. You've got a thought leader who is phenomenal at thought leading, put in the position of CEO, and it's not going to work. And that may be so I can do some simple suggestions down the road about what to do. But those are the pragmatic issues. Those are fairly simple. I mean, I founded 4 companies, so many of those things are fairly simple to see when you're on the outside looking in. But the real work is, how is he or she dealing with what's going on? What story are they telling themselves about themselves? Are they feeling abused? Are they feeling invisible? Are they feeling frustrated as if everybody's going against them intentionally? You know, where are they coming from emotionally as they deal with this problem? And then I'm able to see how much of their emotional response or reaction really exacerbated a problem or created it. You know, so it's really looking at the emotional element of what's taking place here. And as I can support them to even just understand, this is because we're talking down the road, I work with people for a bit. But in the beginning, it's just, what is this doing to you? How is all of this situation that's going on impacting you? How is it impacting you energetically? Are you exhausted all the time? Are you enraged all the time? Are you feeling like you have to defend yourself from the planet all the time? Because if that's the case, when they go home, they're still protecting themselves. They're either taking that rage home, or they're taking that defense, waiting for their wife or their kids to assault them when they walk in the door. Somebody's going to have a problem, and here we go again. And they anticipate that's the energy they bring in, and something's going to feed that. So let's look at what's going on for them energetically, and how can I best support them in reframing this so that we can start working with the situation.
So would the word transparency fit into this somehow? Because being transparent about what it is you're feeling and how you're leading, and being ready to get the feed, what I call feed forward.
Right.
I think transparency is an important element here. Thoughts?
Transparency is important here because what transparency will do is allow them to see the part they are playing in the situation.
Yes.
And for a second, am I saying it's their fault? I never go to fault anyway. That's just not me, you know. But what part are they playing in it? And in the transparency, if they've got enough ego strength, and you would think, well, of course they do, but I say not necessarily. If they have enough ego strength, they can begin to see the part they're playing in this, or the part they're bringing to it that makes it appear bigger than it is or more catastrophic than it is. Because I always think in terms of big problems or little problems. I don't think in terms of catastrophes or crises. There's always a solution. Let's break this apart and see where we need to go and what we need to do with it. And let's look at how you see yourself in this situation. And how can I help you either see yourself differently or help you understand how you got into that place that you're seeing. And when you're transparent, our work goes like that. It's simple, it's easy, and we can go forward. And the difficulty doesn't come from you, it comes from how we can make the changes necessary to support you in going forward. But transparency makes work my kind of work so much easier because you're willing to look and see.
So in video number 1, if folks, if you go back, it's great, listen to it. One of the words was authentic. Video number 2, one of the words was presence. And I'm thinking in an indirect way, I know we've been talking about emotions, but I would go transparency would make a trifecta here.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really great. I love how you did that. Yeah.
Yeah. And because I'm always looking for words, like I'm always thinking about what are the words for the world.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of pops up. But the other part to this whole thing is that it's well and good to understand what it is to be authentic, to have presence, to figure out the transparency aspect, understand your emotions. But things sometimes go off the rails.
Yeah.
And we might end up in health-related issues.
Right.
We might talk about injuries and illness. And then we flip around, we say, well, let's talk about wellness. And so there must be something in that, in your experience, in your lived experience, that's worth exploring right now as a support of or a counterpoint of what it is that we've been talking about. Where would you jump into words like illness and wellness and health? Where would you jump into now?
Well, what I do is one of my first questions in that first meeting is, how is your health?
Okay.
And if he or she says, oh, it's perfect. And I just say, okay, I'll come back to that later.
Yeah.
You're not going to be, unless this is a brand new mess, you're not going to be in this for very long without having some physical impact, because these create huge stress. And every personality holds their stress differently. I've created a system. It's called the 5 Archetypes of Leadership. And it has the thought leader, the team leader, and so forth. And it shows their vulnerabilities, it shows the strengths, and it shows the particular disorders or diseases each of these styles of leadership is predisposed to, because each style holds their stress differently. So as I'm working with him or her, I can understand what is their style of leadership. And frequently it isn't what they think it is. You know, I've had a client I was working with tell me that her style of leadership is, I'm very much a dictator. I know exactly what I want and how I want it. And this is how I do it. And I said, whoa, I said, you can be a real hard ass. You really can be in somebody's face. I said, but is that truly who you are? Well, of course it is. I said, okay. My guess is maybe not, but we can figure that out as we get to know each other. And then later down the road, when I could show her that she is an absolute visionary, she is an absolute visionary. This dictator style leadership is something she developed because she thought that's what leaders did. Leaders knew the right way. Leaders imposed the right way. Leaders expected everybody to jump to the right way. So when it ended up, I'm sorry about that. When it ended up that she could see, oh yeah, that's simply a skill I learned. That's not natural to me. We then could work with all of this very, very differently, and we could help her understand. And then we could look at the kinds of diseases or disorders would develop for somebody who was a visionary leader. And unfortunately, she did have one of those disorders, and she found out later. But always, when you look at situations that create great stress, we're going to hold it somewhere in our body.
Yes.
And how we hold it in our body is going to depend on our personality and our leadership style. The thought leader is going to have many more, maybe the eyes, they're just think about this, the logic of this. They're going to have more of the eyes. There's going to be more skin disorders. It's going to be more joints and ligament disorders. And the team leader, that person who just comes in and creates phenomenal teams, they're going to develop conditions that are more about diabetes or about addictions or so many other eating disorders, so many other issues that could take place over there. So each one is going to, the one that knows exactly how it's supposed to be and demands that they be worshipped and adored is going to have much more, it's more the energy of I'm going to huff and puff and blow your house down because I'm in charge and that's the way it's going to be. All the energy is held up here, so now you've got heart attacks, now you've got strokes. So you've got, and then that other leader who just demands perfection at all times. The prior one is it's my way or the wrong way, whereas the one that demands perfection is there is one right way. It isn't even his or hers. It's what the whole world knows is the one right way, and that's how it's supposed to be. They're going to be much more rigidly held. So there's going to be much more minimal process in organic and systemic function because everything is held so tightly it's not able, even the lungs can't expand in and out because they hold themselves so rigidly. So lung disorders could be a condition that they are more prone to. So it's really looking at what we can anticipate. And so when I go in and I get to know them and I get to understand their style of leadership, then what I have them do is literally take out a piece of paper and go from the time they were 10 or 12 years of age or younger if they can remember. Write down all the diseases, all the disorders, all the so-called accidents, the breaks, all of the things that they've had in their lives. Write all of those down in this column as best as they can remember. And then when they're done, I'll have them write down what was going on in your life when every single one of those took place. And if you can't remember, that's okay. But to the best of your memory, what was going on in your life every time one of those things showed up, those so-called accidents or those diseases or disorders. And when they can begin to see that there's a pattern, I now am in a much better place to be able to support them in understanding that with this going on in their life right now, if they do have their health, how can I support them in maintaining that by changing how they're holding their stress, by changing how they're viewing, because stress is always about how we view something. If everything is a catastrophe, we view it from that light. If it's a temporary problem, we view it from that light. So how can I help you change your perspective perhaps, or reinforce a healthy perspective on what's going on so we can support your physical health? And now let's go back to your emotional health and your spiritual health. And what are you doing to support yourself energetically? Because if you think you're fine while you're running around like this, you're not. You're not. So how can I help you? Really begin some self-care in the midst of what you think doesn't allow you the time for self-care.
Right.
Yeah.
People are starting to get to know me through the Wellther series as well. So one of the things I do is I play with words. And when it comes to stress and stressed, I always enjoy flipping stress around, and it forms the word desserts. Mm-hmm. So I always thought, what's a great way to deal with stress? And when you're stressed out, just go have, in moderation, have some desserts. Right. And it sort of speaks to what we were talking about in the first one, the notion of flipping it around and seeing it in different ways,
Right.
right, is an important aspect of what it is that you're sharing. Seeing it in different ways, right? You can be in the world or be for the world. It's a different way of seeing things. So how
Always.
would you help someone see things differently?
Well, again, depending on who he or she is, because some people's defenses work this way, some people's defenses work that way. And depending on their emotional intelligence, depending upon their level of development, any presentation that maybe they don't have it all together is going to be offensive. So I've got to come in from one avenue. Somebody else who's done more personal work, I can be more direct. So it really depends on where they are and how I can best serve them. But what I would do is, in looking at you, how are you feeling today? What's going on with you today, emotionally, spiritually, and physically? And I'm fine. Thanks for asking. Now, I really want to get down and work and look at this here. Okay, I will go in and work with them and work with this right here. And while I'm doing that, in the subtleties, I will simply be dropping seeds everywhere. All right, so either it's dropping seeds of, wow, you've been under a whole lot. I can't imagine that you feel anything but stress when you walk through these doors in the morning. Well, yeah, no, I don't notice it because I'm really, there's a lot going on at home too. Oh, really? What's going on at home? If you don't mind, how can I help? What's happening over there? Because I'm sure that's being impacted by this and this is impacting that. And my golly, and it's just a cycle. How difficult it must be for you at this point. What's happening there as well. And so as I can begin to support them seeing there's no such thing as my work life and my home life. These are always impacting each other. There's always this movement that goes back and forth. And what I can help them see is there's this person here, not the CEO, or not the president, or not the vice president, depending on who he or she is. There's this person here who has a whole life. And now let's make this job one part of your life. Let's come back over here again and let's look at the person apart from all of that. And more times than not, they haven't done that in a very long time. They haven't seen them apart from all of the stressors and all the relationships in their lives.
So would it be important, as you share about how you might work, interact, guide someone who's an executive, for them to also get that embodied knowledge, get that wisdom of how to use what it is they've learned from you with those that they interact with on a given day, so that they can be authentic and present and transparent? Is that a value in our world today?
That is my ultimate goal. My ultimate goal in working with those in senior leadership, those in obviously, I think we're all in leadership, but within the corporate world, whatever that may be,
Yeah.
those are in the senior level. When I can work with them, whether that's a COO, CEO, anybody up there, and I can support them in seeing the world from a different perspective, I know not only are they going to change their relationships with everybody else in that company that they interact with, they are going to begin to see the culture of the company, because I can assure you, I will be asking about the culture of the company as I'm working with him or her. And because of their position, they have the ability to take a look at the culture of the company and see where there needs to be some drastic changes made, some small changes made. It all depends. That would help everybody in that organization have a healthier work environment, and then look at what are they bringing in. I know one of the businesses here in Hartford opened up retreat rooms. People could go in and meditate in certain rooms on each floor. There was a yoga mat out there in different floors and different rooms that they put aside, which really gave people permission when you're so buried under. And this, you can go away for 15 minutes and enter a new world, if you will, for 15 minutes. and come back in a completely different place and approach the problem completely differently. So just the leader, just the CEO, recognizing the value of that quiet time for himself with suggestion from an effective coach can say, whoa, we do have these empty spaces that, wow, if this worked for me, just think if it happens for the other 8,000 people in this organization. And to me, the gift of working with those in senior management are that we can impact the entire company. Whereas if I work with the secretary, I may impact her life and her family's life, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to impact the thousands of people in the organization. And so for me, the responsibility I take on, the gift I take on, is my ability to impact the entire organization. And not that I dump that on that person, but just in sharing the wisdom that with their new wisdom, their new skill sets, wouldn't it be amazing if this was a huge part of the culture that they're working in? So everybody got to be this much more effective, this much more efficient, this much more productive, and to approach their financial needs. Imagine if we decreased sick days enormously because the people in your company didn't need to get sick. They never developed that emotional and spiritual realities that impacted down here, or that we allowed them to look at them differently because we presented a different way of looking at life and looking at work, so that they didn't have the sick days. And also, if we bring in working in an organization with purpose, and it isn't just somewhere on a wall, someplace is a vision statement and a mission statement, but that there's actually a purpose that is presented in the monthly newsletter or that is presented in meetings. And you get people in alignment with the purpose of the organization. Now you've got employee engagement that has just skyrocketed because now they're living their purpose. They're not just putting in time. So bringing that spiritual element into the workplace will shift and change how the company is organized and how the company sees its employees. And we now end up with, however you want to word that, conscious capitalism, however you want to see that, we end up with a whole other way of looking at the company, all because one man or woman brought a whole other energy, a whole other perspective into the workplace.
So it's very much because as we close out for this one, it's if we pick anything up out of this is, or maybe this is what I'm picking up out of this, okay, is to own my authenticity, to own my presence, to own my transparency, and in so sharing who I am being for the world is an absolutely extraordinary way in which to lead.
It is the most effective way to lead, the most effective way to bring people on board so that they support you and your purpose, not just the company. Because we all need relationships. And if they know that there is a relationship with somebody at the top, and that doesn't mean you have lunch with everybody at your company, but it means that your authenticity, your transparency, your presence allows them to understand who's leading this company, where is it going, what does that look like for them. And then when they do see you, they don't see the persona of the CEO. They see Bill or Mary, who's really doing what he or she loves to do as they're making an impact on the planet, as they're changing the world. And they want to be a part of that dynamic. They want to be in relationship with you and in relationship with your purpose. That transparency, that authenticity, it absolutely changes how businesses operate.
So with that, Dr. Dorothy, thank you for participating in the Wellther series and sharing your insights with us. And I think that's the best way to say goodbye and just say thank you for what it is you shared. So
Thank you. Thank you. It is a joy. And you know, for all of us, and however we're called to do this, making the world a better place, being for the world, as you beautifully phrased it, rather than in the world, being for the world calls us to really be in relationship with it and with all of the people on it. What a gift to send out to the world through these videos. Congratulations to you for thinking of it and then having the strength to go make it happen.
thank you. Take care.